In 1870, a nun in Belgium, Sister Mary Seraphine, received the gift of seeing her father who came to her from Purgatory. A few days before learning about his death, she had suddenly been seized by a sort of depression and oppression that she could not shake, although she normally was always very cheerful and never suffered from melancholy. She also experienced a strange weight on her shoulder, and every so often it felt like someone would pull on her scapular, although no one was ever there. On July 27th, she received word that her father had died from an illness on July 17th, which was the same day that she began to experience all these mysterious happenings. From that time onward, she began to hear moans that sounded much like her father. Eventually, she began to hear the words, "Dear daughter, have mercy on me, have mercy on me, have mercy on me." She heard this numerous times over the days and weeks. The weight that she felt on her shoulder felt like a leaden weight, and this weight increased, as well as the depression and sorrow that followed her everywhere. In addition to this, on October 4th, she got a severe headache that never left her. Finally, on October 14th, she saw her deceased father standing at the end of her bed. He looked very sorrowful and was surrounded by flames, and she could feel the intense heat as well. Frightened, she screamed for help, and her father disappeared. However, the next evening, as she was praying the Salve Regina before bed, her father suddenly appeared to her for a second time, in the same state as before. This time she didn't scream, and she wasn't as frightened. She wondered if he was in purgatory for some kind of crime that he may have committed with his business during his life, but he answered her thought, "No, I am not guilty of any injustice. I suffer from my continual impatience, and for faults I cannot mention." It's interesting as we read these stories how many souls suffer in purgatory for impatience during their suffering. Impatience while suffering is an imperfection that needs purifying because the soul does not conform to God's will during their suffering. "Haven't the masses we have said for you helped at all?" his daughter asked. "Oh yes," her father replied. "My soul is refreshed every morning by a refreshing dew, but that is not sufficient. I am in need of the Stations of the Cross." On October 16th, her father appeared to her again. Sister Seraphine had been inclined to say, when these apparitions happened, "All good spirits praise the Lord." But when he didn't say this with her, she thought he was an evil spirit. Reading her thoughts, her father said, "No, no, I am not a devil." She replied, "Then say with me, 'Praise be to Jesus Christ and Mary.'" He repeated this prayer twice, and then added the words of the Gospel of St. John, "And the Word was made flesh." Then he complained, "Alas, I am over 6 years in purgatory, and you have no compassion with me." Sister Seraphine said, "Poor father, how can you speak like this when it is hardly 3 months since you died?" He responded, "You don't know what eternity is. The soul, once having seen God, is consumed with an ardent desire of remaining in His presence. Because of the intense desire and suffering the souls experience in purgatory, a short time on earth is experienced as an eternity in purgatory." Her father continued, "I am sentenced to purgatory for 6 months, but if your community would pray unceasingly for me, my punishment would be reduced by 1/2. God has permitted me to implore you for my release." Here he sheds a little more light of another reason why he is in purgatory. "How senseless I was to have opposed your vocation. Now I am relieved only in your presence. The rest of the children think that I am in heaven, and scarcely one of them say a prayer for me now and then. Poor Joanna alone continues to pray for me and thereby helps me." Sister Seraphine knew that this was true, that her siblings considered their father in heaven, for they had written in their letter of his death, "Father died like a saint and is now in heaven." How many times have we heard people say things like this, not wanting to consider even for a moment that their loved ones lived a good life, and yet, rather than insult their memory, they instead choose to believe that they're already in heaven, but in reality they're abandoned and alone in purgatory. His daughter, deeply grieved by this, said, "Poor father, I am entirely at your service. You may trouble me at will, as long as the rest of the community are not disturbed. I will have many prayers said for you. Tell me what you particularly desire." He said, I wish that 10 Masses be celebrated and that the Stations of the Cross be visited for me often." After promising to do this, she asked if her mother was still in purgatory. He answered, "No, on entering eternity, I was informed that she went straight to heaven after her death. You sacrificed your health by nursing her in her last illness, and now I come to trouble you for my deliverance." On October 17th, her father appeared to her again, looking very sorrowful. He complained to his daughter that he was suffering more than he was the day before, and that the community was not praying enough for his soul. His daughter said, "But father, the sisters cannot pray for you all day long. According to our rule, we must devote our time to both prayer and work." "I do not expect that they pray continually," her father replied, "but they might direct their intentions to my release. Every work, even the very least, performed in this state of grace and offered to God, is meritorious and of atoning value, and serves to lessen our punishment. To offer up our work, such as cleaning the bathroom or washing the dishes or simply using our time for someone else, can be very beneficial to the poor souls, because it is an act of perfect charity for neighbor." The soul went on, "If the sisters do not come to my aid, I shall continue to trouble you, for the Lord has given me permission. My dear daughter, remember the sacrifice you made on the day of your investment. Now you must bear the consequences. Behold the fiery cistern in which I am now confined. There are several hundreds of us in it. Oh, if only people would know what purgatory is, they would suffer everything in order to escape it and to release the poor souls confined in it. You must become a holy religious. You must faithfully observe all the rules, even those that may seem to be immaterial. The purgatory of religious is terrible." This cistern that he talked about was a big cistern in which the sister was able to see. Lots of smoke continually rose up from it, and her father showed her his parched tongue, saying, "I thirst." Her father again returned the following evening. He told her that originally his purgatory was to last for many years, but thanks to the intercession of the Blessed Virgin, his time was reduced to just a few months. This was in part for having such great devotion to her during his lifetime, observing all her feasts faithfully, being generous to the poor, and helping to build a home for the little sisters of the poor by begging for money door to door. During one of these apparitions, Sister Mary Seraphine held out a book to him for him to touch, as well as her hand, for proof that these apparitions were real, as she was tormented by doubts. "No," he said, "I will not do it. The pain you feel is according to the will of God, and your uncertainty is to hasten my deliverance." However, he did touch her on the shoulder and above her heart, causing her intense pain. Oddly, there was no burn mark on her habit, but there was a black spot on her skin where no one could see it. By the command of her spiritual director, she asked her father one time what prayers would be more beneficial to the poor souls on All Souls' Day. Instead of answering the question, he said, "Alas, the world does not believe that the fire of purgatory is similar to that of hell. If a person could but once visit purgatory, he would never more commit the least sin, so rigorously are the souls punished." During the visits, Sister Mary Seraphine asked about some of the sisters that had died, and if they were in purgatory. He answered that he was not allowed to tell her if they were in purgatory. However, he was permitted to tell her if they were in heaven. Another time, one of the sisters in the community asked Sister Mary Seraphine to ask about her deceased father, who had died without the sacraments and had not been practicing his faith toward the end of his life. The soul answered that her father had been saved, but would be in purgatory for 20 years. He was also able to tell Sister Mary Seraphine that her little sister, who had died 16 years ago at the age of 8 years old, had just recently been released from purgatory. In addition to this information, she asked him, again under obedience from her confessor, to ask him if it was true that the suffering in purgatory surpassed the sufferings of all the martyrs. He answered in the affirmative. Next, she asked him if it was true that those who wore the scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel were truly released on the first Saturday after their death. He answered that this was most certainly true, as long as they had faithfully fulfilled all the conditions. He also revealed that some souls are made to stay in purgatory until the end of the world. Of his own judgment, he told his daughter that Saint Joseph had also been present and that he had often accompanied the Blessed Virgin to visit him in purgatory. He was also able to see his guardian angel, who gave him a lot of comfort. Despite all these comforts, however, his greatest suffering was the constant yearning to see God, because before entering purgatory, he had seen the infinite majesty of God, and this vision left him with an increasing thirst to see him again. On November 23rd, he appeared to his daughter again, with the flames surrounding him as usual, but this time he came closer to her, and her physical suffering increased. She felt that she was all on fire. He told her that if the community continued praying for him, he would be released during the Christmas holidays. His longing to see God continually increased, which also caused his sufferings to increase. He complained to his daughter about this. "It seems an eternity since I arrived in purgatory. At present, my greatest torment is the intense longing to behold God and to enjoy his possession. I feel continually elevated towards him and am at the same time repulsed and cast into the abyss. Sometimes I'm on the edge of the cistern, seemingly about to be released from it, when I immediately feel the divine justice detaining me because I have not sufficiently atoned." St. Catherine of Genoa elaborates on this experience. As a soul becomes purified, it feels torn apart by the upward force of the yearning for God, and yet the impurities of the soul, not yet fully purified, holds it back. On December 3rd, Sister Mary Seraphine saw her father again. He was still very sorrowful. However, he seemed to be greatly relieved. He described to her the intense love for God that he felt, and the great desire to behold him. When the apparitions had first started, she had asked him to repeat with her some of the prayers the souls had said in purgatory. At first, he had been unable to do this, as he was so focused on his own sufferings and his need for her help. But now he was able to tell her, "I continually make these 3 acts of love. O my God, grant me the love with which the seraphim are inflamed. O my God, grant me still more. Grant me the love which inflames the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary. O my God, why can I not love thee as thou lovest thyself?" He then told her, "I am permitted to tell you, dear daughter, that although you are very weak, you will have great pain to suffer between now and Christmas, on which day I shall be released." From that day on, he didn't appear to her until December 12th. After that, he began to appear to her again, brighter each time. Between December 14th to the 25th, there was a pause in the apparitions, and during this time, Sister Seraphine suffered so much that she could hardly visit the chapel. Then on Christmas night, although it took much effort, she was able to go to the midnight mass. As the priest elevated the sacred host, her father appeared to her in supernatural splendor. He said to her, "My punishment is ended. I come to thank you and your community for all the prayers you said for me. From now on, I shall pray for you all." He appeared to her one more time after Mass when she had returned to her room to convince her that he truly was in heaven and to thank her again. She implored him to pray for her to have enough strength and health to observe the rule of the community. He said, "I will pray for you perfect resignation to the will of God and the grace to enter heaven without having to suffer purgatory." With this last vision, he was so resplendent with light that her eyes could hardly take it. Having now caught a glimpse of God's glory, her yearning to see God increased as it does with the saints who experience a great yearning for God before their death. After 6 months of suffering like this, she died at the age of 28 on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, and we can only assume that she had attained the grace to go straight to heaven.